Hola clase, I hope you are all home enjoying the snow today. Since we are working on an asynchronous day, that means that you'll be doing work on your own from home. So we wanted to send out this screencastify to go over the following irregular preterite verbs. We call these the group verbs, and they are the IUJ group verbs. You'll want to record these notes on a sheet of paper, preferably the preterite note worksheet that you were given last week to organize all of the preterite conjugations we've been learning. So grab a piece of paper, a pen or a pencil, and let's get ready to do the group verbs. Our first set of group verbs is what we call the I group. And we call this the I group because the verb is going to change to something that incorporates the letter I. And the verb that we have in this group is the verb hacer, which means to do, like if you do your homework, or to make, like if you make your bed or make dinner. And the conjugation of hacer looks like this. In the yo form, we have hice. Remember, you don't pronounce the H at the beginning of a Spanish word, so you just start with the I. Hice is the yo form. In the to form, hiciste. Él, ella, usted, hizo. Notice that the C changes to a Z for this form. For nosotros, hicimos. Vosotros, hicisteis. And ellos, ellas, ustedes, hicieron. You'll know that there are no accents on this verb conjugation, which makes it easy for us in La Clase de Español. Some other common I groups are the verbs venir, which would change to vin, and then you would add the endings that you see on hacer, and querer, which changes to quis, and then you would just add the endings that you have for hacer. Don't worry about writing down the conjugations of venir and querer. They're just there so you know that there are two other I group verbs. After the I group, we're going to move to what we call the U group. And there are two verbs in this group. The first verb is the verb estar, which means to be when you're talking about your health, your feelings, your emotions, your location, and your position. And estar is going to change to estuve, and then you're going to add endings to that. So the conjugation of estar would look like this. Estuve, estuviste, estuvo. Estuvimos, estuvisteis, estuvieron. Also notice there are no accents on this conjugation because, like I said before, there are no accents in the I-U-J verbs. Another U group verb we're going to study is the verbo tener, and tener changes to tuve, and the conjugation looks like this. In the yo form, tuve. In the tu form, tuviste. Él, ella, usted, tuvo. Nosotros tuvimos. Vosotros tuvisteis. And ellos, ellas, ustedes, tuvieron. There are some other U group verbs that I'm going to show you. We do not have to copy the conjugation of them down, but they look like this. Andar, which means to walk, changes to anduv. Poder, which means to be able to, changes to pud. Poner, which means to put or to place, changes to pus. And saber, which means to know a fact or information, changes to sup. Again, do not worry about writing any of those conjugations down. They're just there so you know there are other U group verbs. And the final group verb we're going to talk about is what we call the J group verb. Like here we have a picture of JZ. And there's a verb in this group that is decir, which means to say or to tell. Like when you ask the question, como se dice, you're asking how does one say. And decir changes to di. And then you're going to add the endings. So our conjugation chart looks like this. Yo dije, tú dijiste, él, ella, usted dijo. Nosotros dijimos, vosotros dijisteis, and ellos, ellas, ustedes dijeron. You'll notice that in the other I and U groups, that for ellos, ellas, ustedes, our ending has been eron, but for the J group verb, you drop the letter I, and the ending just becomes eron. So for ellos, ellas, ustedes, dijeron is the conjugation. There are some other J group verbs that look like this. Conducir changes to condu. Producir changes to produ. Traer changes to tra, and traducir changes to tradu. And then you would just add the endings that you see on the verb decir. We're going to take some of the verbs we just learned in the preterit and see if we can fill in their conjugations. So take a look here. For numero uno, I have yo, and the verb is hacer la tarea anoche. So if I wanted to communicate that I did the homework last night, think about what form of hacer I would plug in there to complete the sentence. I'll give you a second to think about it. And the yo form verb hopefully you came up with was hice. For numero dos, we have mis amigos. The verb is decir, hola en la escuela. So if I wanted to communicate that my friend said hi in school, think about what form of decir I would use for mis amigos. I'll give you a second to think. And hopefully you guys came up with the conjugation dijeron. Next, we have nosotros and tener un examen en la clase de español. So I want to communicate that we had a test in Spanish class. Think about the verb form of tener that I would fill in here. And the correct conjugation would be nosotros tuvimos. Hopefully you got that as well. For numero cuatro, I have tú and estar tarde ayer. If I wanted to communicate that you were late yesterday, think about the form of estar that I would use according to the subject tú that is given. That verb conjugation would be estuviste. And then finally, we have Miguel and hacer la cama esta mañana. So if you wanted to communicate that Miguel made his bed this morning, think about the verb conjugation. This is the tricky one. It has a little change in it. And hopefully you guys came up with the verbo hizo. Miguel hizo la cama esta mañana. Miguel made his bed this morning. Again, remember that none of these conjugations have accents. So we like to say IUJ, no accents, yay. You guys are now going to take this information, these IUJ group verb conjugations that we just did, and use it in order to complete quizzes to finish up our lesson in class today. Buena suerte. Adios.